At the end of the last devlog, I set myself the goal of doing side quest stuff, which ended up proving itself both a bit too ambitious for me, and also not enough, because I kinda ran out of stuff to do. But I have something working, and here I am to report on what I've done. If this is your first time on the channel, Ponpai is a tactical strategy game where you befriend monsters and have them join your team. If you want to know more about the game, the introductory video will be linked in the description. I'll get the small stuff out of the way first. The overworld healing block is no longer a block, but instead a drinking fountain. Attacks that copy an opponent's powers will now have a dedicated animation. At the request of one of my friends, the paralysis status effect is now temporary. After I added the battle backgrounds in the previous devlog, another one of my friends requested a grid overlay so you could more easily tell your position, so I added this as an option in the pause menu. I'm thinking of adding a button for this in the battle itself, but I never got around to it. Instead, I added 5 new Ponpai species, which was just for my own amusement, really. There's something meditative about adding them to the game, but none of them are super impressive this time around. Except MP, whose ability negates the effects of all other abilities. And finally, you can pick up items in the overworld. Now let's get around to that side quest stuff. Around the lower left corner of the town, you'll find a human with this symbol over her head, and she gives you the task of finding her lucky bracelet. And this leads you to the new area of the game, the forest. Making the forest was a chore. Not only is this way bigger than the town map, but all of the walls are the leaves on the trees, which takes infinitely longer to draw. Since all of the walls here are sticking up from where they would be in a 3D space, what I did was sketch the area that I wanted the player to collide with, drew the bubbly leaf texture around them, then dragged them up and drew in the tree parts. For each part of the map. And I'm not skilled enough to hide things behind certain parts of the background yet, so when adding in the collisions, I had to do that thing where a character can't walk too close behind large objects. I always hated this kind of stuff as a kid, but now I know why they did it. And that was just drawing the bloody thing. Because I added all of these weird curves and angles, I had to include more collision boxes than was probably necessary. My immediate thought was to add a collision polygon, but for whatever reason the player can easily walk through that. The inside isn't actually filled in, it's just the outline, and I don't know why. And then there were these cliffs. My idea was for the player to need to get across using a bridge that they had to get a Ponpai to make. What I didn't account for was that this adds a layer of depth to the map that I never tried before. I need situational walls that prevent the player from walking off or on depending on what layer they're supposed to be on. A really thin line wouldn't work, since the collision polygon didn't earlier. So I created some more walls, some on the outside of the cliff and some on the inside, and had these invisible collisions that tell the player to step up or down the Z-axis. Initially, I tried to make it so stepping up or down would disable or undisable certain collision boxes, but this led to a notable amount of lag. So instead, the collision shapes not being used at the moment are dragged well off the border of the map. And then there was the bridge itself, which similarly needed to have the collision shapes moved away, or else the player wouldn't be able to walk underneath it. I'll spare you all of the mind-boggling stuff, but now I have a system that lets you walk over the bridge one way and under it another way, without being able to jump into the wrong side. But then I got to work on ending the quest once you gave the bracelet back. I originally wanted a Dragard to come and attack you, then go away if, and only if, you beat them and their team. But that ran into some complications as well. My current dialogue system is very slapdash, and any actions that occur within talking, such as moving characters around or giving a multiple choice answer, are activated through special dialogue boxes that don't actually appear. When you fight the Pandemeni in the building, it'll give 2 dialogue trees to the game node, and once the fight is over, one of these 2 trees will be launched depending on whether you won or lost. And when you talk to Nico, this line of dialogue moves them to the right, as you can see in-game. But since that line of code references the specific character that's being moved, when code like that is copied over to a post-fight world, it's hard to explain, but basically, when you enter a fight, the overworld is deleted and then recreated. But the code from earlier is still trying to reference the node from the previous world, and thus it crashes the game since there's no previous world anymore. And it was at this point that my brain completely crashed and I had to go lie down for a while. In the current build, I fixed this by having you fight the Dragard in the forest, but this doesn't really address the underlying issue. And that's everything I've done. As I said in the beginning, it was both incredibly taxing for me and also clearly not enough to fill my week with how much other stuff I ended up doing. If you want to try out the prototype for yourself, the link will be in the description. Otherwise, look forward to the next devlog, where I'll be cleaning up my code. Thanks for watching.